Hi students, your rough draft is due tomorrow. You should have your handwritten draft and please type that information into a PowerPoint slide that you've started. Notice I haven't formatted. I just want you to get it in there so we're not wasting time typing when you can just be peer reviewing. Today in class, we drew our little brainstorming organizer on the rough draft. And I'm going to show you how you should go about writing this poem. Here's my picture. And the first step, I looked at it carefully and made a note of the colors. There aren't many here, gray, white, and pinkish. And then I made a note of the things that I'm seeing, like sky, mountains, and fog. And then I imagined myself in the scene and what I might hear. Interestingly, in this photo, I can't imagine hearing anything. Silence is what comes to mind, so that's what I wrote. How would I feel if I were there? Oh, very cold and very alone. That fog coming in feels very threatening, like once it does, I will freeze to death out there. So I'm feeling very negative about that. And what I wrote is the message I want to convey is that winter is a dead time, lonely or cold. I'm not too sure what I want to say, but I know that it will be negative based on my reaction to this poem, to this picture. Okay, I'm ready to get started. A good place to start is to look at your list of things and think about what stands out to you. To me, in this picture, the fog is really capturing my attention. So I'm going to write that word. I'm going to leave off the word the, because in a poem, you want to use as few words as possible to make the most impact. So little words like the or aren't necessarily needed. That fog, goodness, there's not much to describe. It's gray. So let me think about what it's doing. And as I said earlier, I feel like that fog is creeping in, and I'm going to write that. Fog creeps into the valley. I feel like it is creeping in between these mountains, so I'm going to add that as well. That's a pretty good sentence, but you know, it's kind of long for a poem. I think I'll divide it, and that will help me in two ways. First, I'll get more sentences for the requirement for a 10-line poem. That's helpful. But more important, when I read it out loud, the lines now mimic the idea of creeping. Fog creeps silently into the valley between the mountains. Now the way that it's phrased echoes the idea I'm trying to say. Okay, let me say more about this. The big deal with this fog to me personally is that once it comes in, I feel like it's going to cover everything here. And if I were there, I'm going to freeze to death. So I'm going to say that. Soon it will blanket the valley. And it's going to block out any warmth. And I can see in this picture there was a little bit warmth from this tiny little sun over here. The weak sun may have offered. That looks pretty good to me. I'm pretty happy with the beginning. But you know, as I read this, I realize I haven't told my reader what season it is. Do I really need to do that? I'm not sure, but let me try adding a line. Winter in the valley. That sounds pretty good. I'm going to take a few minutes to read this to myself and just decide if I like it or want to change anything. Okay, I did read this a couple of times and I realized I didn't like that last line. I thought it was too obvious to put winter in there. So instead, I used the line coldness descends. And I liked the sound of the sharp C in coldness. It was very final. All right, I have talked a lot about this fog, and I want to turn my attention to some of the other things in the picture. I talked a little bit about the sun, and it's very weak, and it's going away. And I almost feel like it's just giving up any hope of warming that valley. So I wrote that. The sun gives up. What a nice example of personification. And then those clouds, what are they doing? They're not really doing anything, are they? They're just sitting there hanging over the valley. They make me almost feel like, I don't know, bystanders above this frigid scene. And I did have an opportunity, because there is some color in them, to describe them as pale gray, and they're almost blushing just a little bit as the sun goes away. Okay. You can see that I'm writing down a lot of the ideas that are just popping into my head as I think about this photo very quietly and carefully. I need something else. Well, those trees, I don't know, those trees, I can imagine myself being one of those trees, are just waiting for that cold air to come in. So the gray trees shiver, that's what I've been doing. And I think I might even add a line that says they're bracing for the winter night. That could be a great way to end this poem. But I'm not sure yet, and I have completed my homework, which is to write a rough draft. And now tomorrow I'll have an opportunity to talk with my editor and another peer about how I might finish this poem. So I'm done. Please follow the same process, and I promise you, you will have success. See you tomorrow.